Right now, in one of the wealthiest zip codes in the country, there is a vice president of engineering who literally just ran a marathon.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And their stock portfolio is peaking, but they secretly believe they cannot survive a 10-hour flight without like three scotches.
Like, it's so common.
It really is. And when you picture someone who has a problem with alcohol, your mind probably doesn't go to that executive, it goes straight to a very specific, almost cinematic image.
The guy stumbling down a dark alley.
Exactly. Stumbling in the pouring rain, clutching a brown paper bag, or you picture the person who has literally lost everything, their home, their job, their family.
Yeah, that classic rock bottom narrative.
Right. We have this culturally ingrained idea of rock bottom. It's this dramatic, undeniable crash. And we tend to think, well, if you haven't hit that absolute bottom, you don't really have a problem. You're fine.
Which is, I mean, it's a
Yeah.
fundamentally flawed metric. We apply this incredibly binary way of looking at human behavior.
Hmm.
You are either perfectly in control or your life is a complete and utter disaster.
And nothing in between.
Right. There is no in-between in that Hollywood narrative. But the reality is that the vast majority of dependency exists entirely in the space between those two extremes.
Which means that cinematic image is doing a massive disservice to millions of people. So today we are taking a deep dive into materials from New Life Recovery Centers.
Yeah, they're a treatment facility based out of San Jose.
Right, serving Silicon Valley and the Bay Area. And they're actually celebrating their 22nd year of providing successful addiction recovery treatment coming up in 2026.
And, 2 decades of clinical practice gives you a very clear lens on how dependencies actually form, far away from any movie cameras.
Oh, absolutely.
It allows you to see the highly functional, highly successful individuals who are just quietly struggling.
And our mission for this deep dive is to completely dismantle those cultural myths surrounding alcohol dependency. We're going to explore the very modern reality of what is called the gray area of drinking.
Which is such an important concept.
It really is. And we want to thoroughly understand the comprehensive step-by-step nature of modern recovery. Because the way treatment works today is radically different from what you see on television. Okay, let's unpack this.
So, to really understand this topic, especially if you're looking at the high-achieving demographic of, say, Silicon Valley, you have to look past the dramatic stereotypes.
Right.
You have to examine the incredibly subtle, quiet ways that alcohol begins to take over a person's routine. I mean, it rarely starts with a public crisis or a massive
Well, it's
failure.
more insidious than that.
Exactly. It starts with very small compromises that just compound over time. So it starts as a reward for a long week.
Oh, like a Friday night treat.
Right, which becomes a necessity to unwind on a Tuesday,
Mhm.
which then becomes a requirement just to get to sleep.
Which brings us directly into the concept from the sources called gray area drinking. I find this fascinating because it describes a huge, often invisible portion of the population.
A very large portion.
These are people who are not in a visible crisis, right? They haven't had a DUI, they haven't been fired, they haven't alienated their families. But privately, internally, they are deeply concerned about their own alcohol intake.
Yeah, they know something is off.
Exactly. And there is this one quote from the New Life materials that really caught my attention. It says, "Sometimes the gray area is simply the place where healthier choices begin."
What's fascinating here is how that single sentence flips the script on how we view seeking help.
How so?
Well, usually people use the lack of a crisis as a shield. They use the term functioning as an absolute alibi. Like, as long as they are functioning, they believe they don't have the right to ask for help.
Or they convince themselves they don't even need it.
Right, exactly.
The excuses are practically a script. I still have a job, I pay my mortgage on time, I only drink expensive wine at night. It's this psychological trap of functioning.
It totally is a trap.
But if you think about it, the concept of the functioning alcoholic makes zero logical sense when you apply it to literally any other area of health or life. Oh, 100%. Like imagine you're driving a high-performance sports car down the highway at 80 miles an hour, and the engine is making this horrific, loud knocking sound.
Right, smoke coming out of the hood.
Yes, smoke is billowing out. But you tell yourself, well, the engine hasn't literally exploded into a fireball on the asphalt yet. I'm still maintaining the speed limit, so I definitely don't need to pull over for a mechanic.
That's a perfect analogy.
Why do we treat our physical and mental health this way?
Well, we treat it that way because high achievers are used to using their intellect to logic their way out of problems.
Ah, I see.
Yeah, if they can point to external metrics of success, a promotion, a healthy bank account, They can rationalize away the internal deficits. And the source material addresses that exact mindset.
Right.
They point out that waiting for rock bottom is one of the most harmful myths out there. I mean, the CDC notes that reducing alcohol use lowers immediate and long-term health risks well before an emergency happens.
So you don't have to wait for the crash.
No, not at all. So the clinical perspective is that people in this gray area are asking themselves the wrong diagnostic question entirely.
Okay, so if asking, have I lost my job, is the wrong diagnostic tool, what's a better metric? Because functioning is just so highly subjective.
They should be asking, what is alcohol already costing my baseline performance?
Oh, wow. Costing.
Yes, as long as you ask, have I lost everything?
Yeah.
You can keep driving that car with the knocking engine. But shifting the perspective to cost is illuminating.
Because a person can be functioning on the outside, but operating at a massive deficit on the inside.
Precisely. You might be paying the bills,
Yeah.
but is alcohol costing you your peace of mind? Is it robbing you of restorative REM sleep?
Or what about the subtle erosion of trust in your marriage?
Exactly. Your patience as a parent,
Yeah.
your natural energy levels, or your authentic self-confidence. When you look closely at the gray area, you usually find that alcohol is already costing the person far more than it is giving them.
Reconceptualizing recovery, not as saving a ruined life, but as an optimization tool for a life that is currently operating at a deficit. I mean,
Right.
that shifts the entire paradigm.
Sure it is.
But that poses a massive contradiction to me. If someone is a high-functioning, successful person, and they realize, okay, this is costing me my sleep, it's putting a ceiling on my potential, I need to stop, why can't they just logically decide to stop?
Right. If you're so smart, just quit.
Exactly. If you are used to outsmarting your problems in the boardroom, why does willpower suddenly fail you at the home bar?
This raises an incredibly important question about the biological reality of dependency.
Mm.
We like to think of our minds as the ultimate control center.
Of course.
But alcohol fundamentally alters the body's neurochemistry. When you drink regularly, your body structurally adapts to the constant presence of alcohol.
Okay, structurally adapts. How?
Well, it's crucial to understand that alcohol is a central nervous system depressant. It slows everything down.
Right.
So to keep you awake, breathing, and functioning, your brain compensates by pumping out excitatory neurotransmitters, like glutamate.
So it's fighting the alcohol.
Yes. It's basically pressing the accelerator to overcome the heavy brake pedal of the alcohol.
Wow. So it is not a moral failing or a lack of discipline. It is a physiological adaptation. The brain has literally rewired itself to operate in the presence of a depressant.
Exactly.
And the sources list some really clear warning signs for this, right? Like drinking more than you intended, needing a drink just to socialize or get to sleep.
Or having memory gaps or blackouts.
Right.
And the most critical, undeniable warning sign of this biological adaptation is experiencing withdrawal symptoms when you try to cut back or stop.
Because of that accelerator pedal.
Yes. Think about the mechanism I just described. Your brain is pumping out massive amounts of stimulants to fight the depressant. If you suddenly remove the alcohol,
You take your foot off the brake.
right, you take your foot off the brake, and your brain doesn't instantly adjust. It's still flooding your body with high-voltage stimulants.
That sounds intense.
It is. That mechanism is exactly why people experience severe anxiety, tremors, intense sweating, insomnia, and an elevated dangerous heart rate when they stop drinking.
It's basically leaving your nervous system in overdrive with no brakes.
Exactly.
And according to the sources, it can get significantly more dangerous than just feeling sick or anxious. The materials specifically outline the risk of seizures and delirium tremens, or DTs.
Yes, which are incredibly serious.
They can actually be fatal if they aren't managed in a medical setting. And this introduces a very clear distinction in the text, one that I think a lot of people misunderstand. And that is, detox is not rehab.
I'm so glad you brought that up. That is perhaps the single biggest misunderstanding in the entire recovery landscape.
Really?
Oh, yeah. People assume that if they just flush the alcohol out of their physical system, they are cured. But detoxing is strictly a medical intervention to manage the dangerous neurochemical seesaw we just talked about.
Right.
It ensures you don't have a seizure. It just stabilizes the physical body.
Yeah. Let me play devil's advocate here, though.
Sure.
Let's say you have a highly motivated executive. They don't want to go to a facility. They decide to tough it out. Assuming they manage to white-knuckle it through a brutal 3-day detox at home safely, haven't they effectively cured the physical problem?
You'd think so, right?
Yeah. I mean, the alcohol is out of their bloodstream. The physical dependency is broken. Why isn't that the end of the story?
Because relying on willpower after DIY detox fundamentally misunderstands the architecture of addiction.
Okay.
To use an analogy, detoxing just puts out the immediate fire in the kitchen. It stops the house from burning down right this second.
Oh, I see.
But it does absolutely nothing to rebuild the house.
Yeah.
The physical dependency is only one layer of the issue.
So you're saying the cravings are still there?
Exactly. Once the alcohol is out of your system,
Yeah.
you are still left with the exact same psychological cravings, the exact same high-pressure stress triggers at work.
The same emotional patterns?
Right. And often, the underlying trauma or anxiety that caused you to use alcohol as a coping mechanism in the first place.
You're just standing in the middle of a burned-out house waiting for the next storm.
Precisely. And the first time it rains, the first time you face a critical project deadline or a harsh argument with your spouse, you're going to reach for the exact same tool you've always used to cope.
Because you don't have a roof?
Because you haven't learned how to build a new roof. The source references SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. Their clinical guidelines emphasize that true treatment involves cognitive behavioral therapy, counseling, relapse prevention planning, and fundamentally rebuilding daily routines.
That makes a lot of sense.
That psychological and behavioral work is what rehab is. Detox is simply the medical prerequisite to safely begin the actual work of rehabilitation.
Okay, so detox clears the smoke and rehab is the architectural rebuild. But let's look at the practical logistics of that. How does an adult with responsibilities actually rebuild their house without entirely abandoning their daily life?
That is the big question.
Right. If you have a demanding career, a mortgage, children in school, the idea of disappearing to an inpatient facility for months feels impossible.
It feels terrifying to a lot of people.
For a lot of people in the gray area, that fear of disruption is the exact thing keeping them from making a change.
And the modern medical community deeply understands that barrier. The reality is that you do not always have to vanish from your life to get highly effective clinical help.
Which is such a relief to hear.
It is. The sources talk extensively about the ASAM criteria, the American Society of Addiction Medicine. This isn't just a buzzword. It's a rigorous set of clinical guidelines used by professionals to match a patient with the exact right level of care.
Like a tailored approach.
Exactly. It's multidimensional. It evaluates a patient's biomedical conditions, their emotional complications, their readiness to change, and their home environment.
So it's not just one size fits all.
No, not at all. It ensures that treatment is not a punishment, but a tailored medical prescription.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because New Life Recovery Centers has built their model around this entire continuum of care. They have inpatient residential for those who need that immersive stabilization, but they also offer PHP, which is a partial hospitalization program, or day treatment.
Right.
In their San Jose facility, that means participating up to 6 days a week for a minimum of 6 hours a day. Then they offer IOP Flex Intensive Outpatient. They even have virtual IOP telehealth for eligible California residents.
Which is huge.
Yeah, and finally, alumni programs for long-term community connection.
Having that spectrum of options is clinical best practice for sustained recovery.
Looking at this continuum, it makes me think of a step-down electrical transformer.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, think about it. If you take a massive high-voltage power line from a power plant and try to plug it directly into your kitchen toaster, the toaster is going to explode. The system cannot handle the voltage jump. You have to step the voltage down gradually through substations, and it seems like that is exactly what this continuum of care does for a human being in recovery.
That's a great way to put it.
You do not take someone from a high-voltage medical detox or an intensive residential crisis and just plug them directly back into the normal grid of their 60-hour-a-week tech job and family life.
It would be a disaster.
Right. You step them down. You go from residential down to PHP day treatment, down to IOP Flex, where you're integrating back into the office, down to virtual check-ins. You are safely lowering the clinical voltage while gradually increasing their exposure to the real world.
That is a highly accurate way to conceptualize it. And what is revolutionary about this flexibility, especially having it all locally accessible in Northern California with a provider like New Life, is that it removes one of the most massive friction points for seeking help.
The fear of disruption.
Exactly. The fear of a complete catastrophic disruption to a person's life is often much stronger than the fear of the alcohol itself. By offering these step-down options, including telehealth, people can maintain their core responsibilities. They can keep their jobs and stay connected to their families, all while getting the intensive structured therapy they need to rebuild their coping mechanisms.
So it integrates recovery into their life rather than pausing their life for recovery.
Perfectly said.
But, integrating recovery into life means we have to talk about the other people living that life. Addiction doesn't happen in a vacuum. It heavily impacts the entire ecosystem around the individual. Let's look at the ripple effect on families.
Yes, us.
Because the source material makes a point to emphasize that families usually see the problem long before the individual is ready or willing to admit it.
They absolutely do.
Eh.
The person drinking is often heavily insulated by their own denial and the protective bubble of their functioning status.
Right, because they're still going to work.
Exactly. But the family feels the daily, tangible reality of the deficit. They notice the physical and emotional isolation.
The broken promises.
Yes, the immediate defensiveness when the topic of drinking is brought up, the missed household responsibilities, the general baseline of anxiety in the house just rises. The family ends up walking on eggshells for years trying to manage the moods of the person drinking.
And complicating that is the intense stigma tied up in how our culture views the solution. There's this lingering, almost punitive fear that sending someone to rehab is a punishment.
Yes.
It's viewed as a consequence for bad behavior, like they're being sent to the principal's office or placed in a penalty box. But the source explicitly redefines this narrative.
It does.
It states clearly, rehab is not a punishment. Rehab is support. It is structure. It is safety. It's a dedicated space to understand what happened to your neurochemistry and heal from it.
We really have to stop viewing addiction treatment as a moral consequence for failure and start viewing it as a standard medical and psychological intervention for a health condition.
Like cardiac rehab after a heart attack.
Exactly like that.
Yeah.
But, overcoming the psychological stigma is only half the battle. The barriers are also incredibly practical.
With cost being the absolute elephant in the room for most families.
Exactly. People often assume they cannot afford quality care before they even look into it. But the reality, as outlined in the New Life materials, is that they accept most major insurance in-network. They work extensively with PPOs, unions, and EAPs.
Let's actually pause and unpack that acronym EAP because it is a vital tool that many professionals misunderstand, an employee assistance program.
Yes. An EAP is essentially a confidential firewall between an employee's medical needs and their company's HR department.
So your boss doesn't find out.
Right. It allows an employee to seek mental health or addiction treatment discreetly, often covering initial costs or facilitating referrals without their direct manager or executives knowing the clinical details.
That's incredible.
It protects the employee's career while getting them the help they need. And places like New Life offer free insurance verification over the phone, removing the guesswork. The resources are very often there, but the fear of the unknown prevents people from making that initial call.
I want to challenge that dynamic for a second, though.
Okay.
Let's say the family is entirely on board. They understand the insurance. They know about the EAT. They realize the functioning label is a trap, and they do not want to wait for the car engine to explode.
Right.
What is a family actually supposed to do if the person drinking flat out refuses to acknowledge the problem? If the individual says, "I'm fine, I'm going to work, leave me alone." Does the family just have to sit around passively and wait for a catastrophic rock bottom to hit them all?
If we connect this to the bigger picture of family dynamics, the clinical answer is a resounding no. Families do not have to wait, and more importantly, they shouldn't wait.
Okay, what can they do?
The source material emphasizes that a family member can call the admissions center directly. They actually provide the specific number, 408-297-1182, for a confidential consultation right now.
Even if the person drinking won't go.
Even if the person drinking aggressively refuses to go, the family can learn how to set healthy, enforceable boundaries. They can learn how to ensure their own emotional and physical safety, and they can begin to understand the clinical reality of what their loved one is experiencing.
So you can start weaving the safety net before the person is even willing to look at the trapeze.
Exactly.
That shifts the power dynamic incredibly. It takes the family out of this helpless, passive role of just absorbing the collateral damage and gives them an actionable, clinical step to take.
It does. Because quite often, the family changing their response, stopping the enabling, setting clear boundaries, refusing to walk on eggshells, is the exact environmental shift needed to help the individual realize that the illusion of the functioning phase is officially over.
Okay, let's take a breath and survey the ground we've covered today. We started by tearing down that cinematic Hollywood myth of the guy in the alley, and we redefined the gray area of drinking.
That highly populated space.
Right, where you haven't lost your career, but alcohol is quietly taxing your sleep, your peace of mind, and your baseline potential. We looked under the hood at the sheer biological mechanism of withdrawal, exploring why willpower fails against a brain flooding itself with stimulants.
Making medical detox a physical necessity.
Exactly. But we also clarified that detox is just putting out the fire, while the therapeutic work of rehab is rebuilding the house. We explored the step-down electrical transformer of modern care, from residential stabilization to day treatment to virtual telehealth, proving you don't have to abandon your life to save it.
Absolutely.
And finally, we looked at how families can utilize tools like EAPs and confidential consultations to take action right now without waiting for permission. So what does this all mean for you, listening right now?
It's a big question.
It is. Whether you are a high performer silently calculating the cost of your own habits, whether you are walking on eggshells around a loved one, or whether you are just trying to understand human psychology, recognizing this spectrum completely changes how we view health. It moves us away from binary judgment and toward actual, practical medical compassion.
And I think there is a deeper philosophical takeaway embedded in all of this, a final thought to mull over.
What's that?
We talked extensively about how intelligent people use functioning, paying the mortgage, holding down an executive job, running marathons as an impenetrable shield to ignore a growing dependency.
Right.
But what if our modern culture stopped viewing functioning as the ultimate unassailable proof of a healthy life? If we stop measuring our wellness strictly by our economic output and our ability to clock in, how might that fundamentally change our relationship, not just with alcohol, but with all the invisible ways we try to numb ourselves and cope with the immense pressures of the modern world?
That is a phenomenal question. It really exposes how dangerously low our bar for a good life has gotten. If you are just white-knuckling the steering wheel of a high-performance car with a knocking engine, hoping it doesn't explode before you reach the driveway, you might technically be getting down the highway, but you certainly aren't enjoying the drive.
Not at all.
And the most important takeaway from today is that you do not have to wait for the fire to ask for directions to the mechanic. Thank you all for joining us on this deep dive. Take care of yourselves, and we'll catch you next time.
Thank you for listening.